Welcome in. It is Big Ten Today. Happy to have you with us on what has turned out to be a very busy and eventful Tuesday. I'm Dave Revson. Trent Meacham going to join me in just a bit, but there is some breaking football news in the Big Ten today. That is our big story. Purdue has a new head coach, and he is a familiar name and face for Big Ten fans. Ryan Walters, the defensive coordinator at Illinois, the last couple of years, will take over as head man in West Lafayette at the ripe old age of 36. He has done a phenomenal job with Illinois, turning them around in just those 2 short years, have been arguably the best unit in the country this year. He, of course, replaces Jeff Brom, who left for his alma mater of Louisville last week. It is time to get to more on this story. Tom Dienhart, who covers Purdue for the On3 network, joins me now. And Tom, really surprising news to me. What was your initial reaction when you heard that Ryan Walters was the choice?
Yeah, Dave, he was a name that was mentioned to me a day or two ago by another sitting head coach as a possible target for Purdue. I was a little surprised when I heard that. Dave, I really thought Purdue's focus was going to be on, first of all, finding a guy who's a proven head coach. And number two, Dave, as you know, finding a coach who has an offensive background, given Purdue's history as a cradle quarterback. So we have almost a 180 here, right? With an unproven guy, never been a head coach, and a guy who comes from the defensive side of the ball. But I will tell you, Dave, I've heard a lot of good things already about Ryan. Not just from an X's and O's standpoint, Dave, but also just from a personality standpoint, just a real rising star in the coaching ranks.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we've been around him last couple of years, and Jerry and Howard and Joshua and I have been wowed by him when we have visited with him at camp. Incredibly smart and cerebral, down to earth. He's everything that you would want in a head coach. That being said, I did not see his name on initial list of candidates. I know within the last day or so, as you said, his name started to percolate around the job. Can you recall the first time when you heard, like just kind of timeline-wise, that Ryan Walters might be a candidate here?
Well, this job officially came open on Wednesday, Dave. So we almost went a full 7 days with this job being open. And I didn't hear his name until Sunday at the earliest. It was the first time I had heard anybody utter his name to me. We had a pretty extensive hot board on our site. I'll be honest, the guy that looked to be the front runner, if you asked most program watchers, was the Western Kentucky head coach, Tyson Helton, 45-year-old guy, an offensive guy. Dave, cut from a lot of the same cloth as Jeff Brom, looked to be a natural next step for a guy like Tyson Helton. I do believe there was conversations with Tyson Helton, but it didn't work out. So again, from my perspective, Dave, Ryan Walters' name did not come on my radar until late in this process, which is only, again, a six-day ordeal.
It is interesting because Purdue does have a brand, as you said, and the most successful part of the Purdue brand through the years has absolutely been offense. And Jeff Brom very much, as you used the phrase, was kind of cut from that cloth. Obviously, he had tremendous success, as we know, at Western Kentucky before coming to Purdue, and really quickly revived Purdue offensively. I mean, they've been a team that had just struggled to move the ball under Darrell Hazel, and he turned into a dynamic and high-powered attack. How surprised are you that, regardless of Ryan Walters being the name, that it's not somebody from the offensive side of the ball and kind of continuing that tradition, cradle quarterbacks, all the things we think about with Purdue?
Again, very surprised. I really thought, again, Bobinski was going to stick to that template. You always hear people say you have to know what you are. What's your elevator pitch? What's your identity? And Dave, again, you talked about that a little bit from a Purdue perspective, the cradle of quarterbacks. And I really, again, thought Bobinski was going to embrace that, but he didn't. So, kudos to him. Now I think, Dave, the real interesting work begins, right? Everybody is going to want to know how this offense is going to look. What's going to be the scheme? And most importantly, Dave, who's going to push the buttons? And also, Dave Revson, Ryan Walters has got to keep this roster together. They've already seen recruits flip. And oh, by the way, Dave, Purdue's got a bowl game on January 2nd against LSU. So there's a lot of balls in the air in West Lafayette right now.
Well, let's get into some of that stuff. Let's unpack a little bit of that. What has been the ripple effect of Brohm's departure? Give me a sense of what the last week has been like around Purdue football.
They've had 5 high school kids decommit already from the class of 2023. And again, signing day is December 21st. So there's still a window there. As far as the transfer portal goes, Dave, they've only had 2 real key guys jump in, and really only 1 star, I would say. Maybe one of their best offensive linemen has jumped in the portal, Spencer Holstead. So I think a lot of players were waiting to see what this hire was going to look like. Now we're going to see a lot of decisions made, I think, right? Do I want to stay? Do I want to go? And again, this is where Ryan Walters has to spring into action and start answering a lot of questions, I'm sure, that current people on the roster have, as well as, of course, the recruits.
You mentioned the offensive coordinator position, and I do think that's going to be fascinating here, and I'm really interested to hear kind of what he has to say, both about, I'm sure he won't name any names necessarily tomorrow, but when he's introduced, by the way, he's going to be introduced tomorrow. I've kind of neglected to say that here along the way, but at that press conference, that'll be a huge question, yeah. I'm sure, as you pointed out. What are the other things you want to hear from him as someone who's been around this program for a long time and really has their finger on the pulse of Purdue football?
I think, you look how college football has changed, or college sports have changed just in the last 4 or 5 years, Dave, because of 2 big things, right? The transfer portal, which now also obviously has immediate eligibility. You got to have a coach who knows how to manage and navigate that, and what his experience is working the portal as an assistant coach. And, and then there's NIL, right? You can't ignore NIL and maybe his familiarity with it, how much he's worked with it in the past at Missouri, at Illinois. I think those are 2 questions I think at least I want to hear him answer. But again, most importantly, I think, like you said, it comes back to that offense. At Illinois, Dave, Brett Bielema is kind of a punch-you-in-the-nose offensive guy, right? They want to pound you, run the ball, wear you down. Well, we know Purdue doesn't do that. And will Ryan Walters embrace a pass-oriented offense that is quarterback-centric? Will be very interesting. I'll tell you what would be a real wild card, Dave, if they did it, would be if they went out and brought back Jamarcus Shepard, who worked at Purdue for a long time as a receivers coach. He works at Washington right now with Kalen DeBoer. Dave, the players really wanted Jamarcus to be the head coach. Jamarcus obviously didn't think was ready, but to bring him back maybe, Dave, in some capacity, maybe as the OC, I mean, that would be pretty interesting, I think.
Last question here, Tom. What do you think are kind of the particular challenges of this job? We have seen some really great moments through the years from Purdue. We've seen some years where Purdue struggled. We've mentioned offense, obviously, as being a focal point, and that's going to be a key decision for him to answer. But for Purdue to be successful in the long term, Ryan Walters has to do what?
You got to develop talent. It's a developmental program. We hear Kirk Ferentz say that about Iowa. Go back to Joe Tiller. He used to say that about Purdue. They really struggle to get that 4- and 5-star talent out of high school. There's not much of a recruiting base or any recruiting base at Purdue. You're surrounded by the University of Illinois, Notre Dame, Michigan comes into the state, Ohio State comes into the state. So you got to find those hidden gems, if you will, and then you have to develop them. And I think now with the portal, you have to be able to work the portal. So it does have its challenges. It doesn't have an illustrious history, but they have shown, Dave, as you know, at times to be able to spring up and have pretty good programs every now and then and challenge for prestigious bowls and even championships.
No doubt, and this year was one of those years, and the atmosphere surrounding the program, as you know, Tom, it's just been incredible. I mean, Ross 8 essentially sold out for the entire year. Just been a ton of fun to watch, and we'll see whether or not they can carry forward the momentum. I'll tell you, just from dealing with Ryan Walters personally, you're going to like him a lot. We'll see whether or not he's able to continue to win at Purdue, but man, an outstanding guy and a really brilliant young football mind. Tom Dienhart, speaking of brilliant football minds, great to talk to you, my friend. As always, keep up the great work.
Take care, Mr. Revson.
All right, buddy. Tom Dienhart from On3 weighing in on very short notice today, and we really appreciate that. There are big happenings in West Lafayette, not just in football, but hoops as well. Back to #1 in the nation, second straight year they've ascended to that spot after never having held it in the rich history of the program previous to last season. As you recall, Boilers did not last long at number 1 a year ago. Got there in early December as well, but lost their first game on a buzzer beater to Rutgers, hoping for a longer stay this year. And Trent Meacham now joining me to talk a little bit of hoops. Busy morning for sure with Boilermaker football, but Boilermaker basketball making news as well. What has stood out this year with Purdue as you've looked at them going from unranked in the preseason, losing Jaden Ivey to the lottery, to now the top team in the country just 6 weeks into the season?
There's a few things, Dave, and you mentioned on brand with the football program. This basketball team, they just feel like they're on brand for a Matt Painter ball club. Last year, they were uber talented, but it just didn't really seem like those pieces fit. And what's been remarkable is from game one, the chemistry, it seems like the roles have been clearly defined. Each player from Zach Edey on down fits those roles so well. Their skills complement one another. I think their personality matches their head coach. And I think there's two big question marks coming into this season. One, Zach Edey was really good, but he was going up against maybe second unit bigs, or Trevin Williams had already kind of imposed his will, and now Zach Edey comes in. Can he play extended minutes? How good can he play 25, 30 minutes a night? And then you have freshman guards. And that's always a big question mark to me when you have freshmen anything, but especially the guard position, and both those answers, so far, they've been remarkable.
Well, Zach Edey is a matchup nightmare, obviously, for people, and there just isn't any way to simulate him in practice. I mean, you get up against him, and it's a whole different world. I thought the big question with him this year was, could he play more than 20 minutes a game? I mean, that was the big thing you wondered. Was he playing 20 minutes a game because Trevion Williams was so good and he didn't want to leave him off the floor? I mean, he was an All-American caliber player as well. Or was he playing 20 minutes a game because he wasn't capable of playing more? I think that's the big thing that stood out to me, Trent, is how well he's gotten up and down the floor, how much he's gotten himself into shape and proven that he can be a 30, 34-minute at times player out on the court for them. That's a huge difference.
Last season, playing under 20 minutes a night. Now, over 31 minutes a game. You got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff, the strength training staff, and Zach Edey, the work that he put in so that he can play extended minutes. And he's being challenged. One, they're dumping the ball to him. He's being fought by 2-3 defenders almost every possession down. And as a big man, you're put in a lot of ball screen situations. So I think he's also an intelligent player. He understands positioning, especially on defense. He doesn't need to get way extended. He is 7'3". Use his length, use his size. So he's a smart player. And I think what would sum up this team, they're smart, they're skilled, they're tough. Okay, Zach Edey is definitely that. And when you have, I'm going to say, the National Player of the Year at this point in the season, I think he's the front runner.
Oh, easily.
We've heard Andy Katz already, proclaim that, and I would agree with Andy. I would agree with Andy, at least right now, and they're number one in the nation. He's playing so well. But those three attributes, smart, skilled, tough, I mean, those freshman guards, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, those guys epitomize that. And I mentioned that was a question mark, guards coming in. How about their leadership? Okay, I think Braden Smith, this is premature. All right, he's young in his career. You're smiling already, Dave.
I'm just fascinated to know where this is going. Yeah.
His emotional leadership, his competitive spirit, I think he could be an all-time leader when I think of some of the greats in this conference, okay? And I say premature, I'm thinking of Mateen Cleaves type, D. Brown type, Aaron Kraft type of guys that were there for 4 years, that won a ton of games, that went to the Final Four, that fans loved for their team, opposing fans maybe not so much. He just has some of those leadership qualities from what I see from afar that I think, wow, he's a great leader. And the swagger that he plays with, the swagger that Fletcher Lawyer plays with, it's fun to watch.
Lots of music to the ears of Purdue fans, I'm sure. And I think that's the big question mark going forward to me with this team is it is early in the year. These are young guys who haven't played beyond high school, who haven't been through the rigors of a Big Ten season. They are not a veteran team, far from it. I mean, David Jenkins has been around a lot, but he doesn't play a ton, right? He plays maybe a third of their minutes. And other than that, I mean, it's a couple juniors sprinkled on the roster, but it's a lot of underclassmen here, Trent. And that is going to be a challenge, I think. I mean, you would know better than me, but when you get into the grind of the Big Ten season and when you go through this for the first time.
No doubt. I think they'll take some bumps. They're not going undefeated. I do think this team is better suited. I mentioned their personality. I think how their pieces fit together than a year ago. And they could be challenged by quick, athletic guards. That backcourt could. A big man that can stretch the floor. I even think of Hunter Dickinson. That's going to be a great matchup. But if he can stretch the floor, knock down some threes, that could change the game somewhat for Purdue defensively. But all the other pieces, not just, Zach Edey, he subs out. Then you have Caleb Furst, Trey Kaufman-Renn, Mason Gillis. They're a physical team. They're doubling up opponents in number of free throws they've taken. They're averaging way more rebounds than opponents. So they're a physical team, but they're also smart. And all those pieces, whether it's Ethan Morton, Brandon Newman coming off the bench, they fit really well, the skills, the personality. But I'm going to come back, despite the National Player of the Year talk with Zach Edey, just those freshman guards and how impressed I've been with the swagger that they play with. And you saw that with that dunk from Fletcher Lawyer. They can really play.
Hard not to be impressed. And oh, by the way, they're also fairly well coached.
Oh, yes, yes.
Todd, so close to that ninth star, always tough to go to penalty kicks. Your thoughts on your incredible team?
Well, I thought, they showed great resilience tonight, obviously going down twice. Thought we were really good second half and had some great chances to win it and really put them under pressure. I give Syracuse a lot of credit. They're a heck of a team. There's a reason that they've been successful this year. And obviously penalties are tough. It's it's a bit of a coin flip, and they made one more. And it's hard because it's so hard to get here. And a lot of people we've been fortunate to get here, but every time you're here, how hard it is to get back. And we'll regroup and do our best to find our way back.
This will be tough, but what will you say to the men when you get them in the locker room?
Not a lot. Not a lot. Not a lot you can't say. I've been in this game. I wasn't in a PK shootout, but I lost my last game as a senior, and that's hard. And there's nothing anyone can say to you. You just gotta be there for each other, dig your way out of it, and tomorrow the sun will shine and we'll find a new day and start the process again. That's the beauty and nature of what we do.
Last question, what does it mean to represent the Big Ten on the biggest stage?
It's a great honor. We feel it's the best conference, and we continue to find Big Ten teams in these big games. And obviously proud to represent the conference, proud to represent Indiana. These guys did it with class. I think a lot of people fell in love with this team this year, and that's part of it too. We're growing the Hoosier fan base. We're growing the sport, and I think tonight was a great display for everyone to see that there's a lot of good things going on in college soccer, and it would have been great to be the last one smiling, but it wasn't our night.
Yeah, hard pill to swallow. Obviously, right now it sucks. It's heartbreaking to get back here again and not get the job done. But yeah, I couldn't be proud of our guys. It's a great group, and we'll try to reflect on the positives. It's hard right now, but yeah.
What does it mean to represent the Big Ten on the biggest stage yet again?
Yeah, for sure. I believe this is like the most consistently best soccer program in the country, and it's been an honor to be here for my career, and it's good to represent the Big Ten.
Back to hoops, we mentioned Purdue at number 1. They're the only Big Ten team in the top 10 this week. Indiana did not move after its loss to Arizona, still 14th. Illinois is at 18 after a week that included a win over number 2 Texas and a home loss to Penn State. Maryland down 7 spots to number 20 after 2 straight losses. Badgers and Buckeyes among the final few in the poll. First ranking of the year, by the way, for Wisconsin. So Trent rejoins me now. Indiana team with the highest expectations entering this year, losers of 2 of 3 here. I think it's fair to point out they played these 3 games without Jalen Hood-Schifino, one of the top freshmen, not just in Big Ten, but in the country. How do you think that has impacted them, his absence?
I think it's huge. There were big expectations for Jalen Hood-Schifino, and his numbers don't blow you away, but the guard play is so important for anyone, especially for Indiana. You know what you're going to get from TJD. Race Thompson is very reliable. Xavier Johnson is kind of a lightning rod for this team. And we saw last year kind of up and down, but the last half of the season, he really turned it on, was exceptional. But I'm telling you from experience, Dave, if you're the one playmaker on a team, okay, and I wasn't quite the caliber of Johnson or Hood-Schifino, but that's so much pressure on you. And Xavier Johnson is an emotional guy. He picks up 94 feet of defense. You never question, does he care, his competitiveness?
Right.
But when all the playmaking duties, you got to initiate the offense. You got to create for yourself because they need him to score. You got to create for your teammates. The shooting woes have been well documented over the years for the Hoosiers. And when Jalen is there with them in the backcourt, it takes so much pressure off him. He can kind of see the game from a different vantage point because Hood Schifino is going to be bringing the ball up the court. He's great in transition. He's a big guard. He can see the floor. So I think you can't minimize the impact when Hood Schifino's out. I don't care what his numbers are. And you saw him improving over the course of his young freshman campaign. I thought that game against North Carolina, the last game he played, he came out, was aggressive, was confident. And when he's playing like that, you talk about the pressure it takes off Xavier Johnson, TJ Deaches, everyone. So hopefully they get him back in the fold. They got a big one Saturday against Kansas sooner than later. But if they have him back, he's only going to improve this season. That takes the load off Xavier, as I mentioned, and it just helps the whole team, that flow on offense. You saw the size that Arizona threw at him, even from a guard. Jalen Hood-Schifino, big guard. I think he would help with that. So a big miss for them, but there are some bright spots. Miller Kopp has been averaging 16 a game the last 3 games. Race Thompson, Arizona didn't try to guard him at the beginning of that game. He stepped up, made 4 threes. So, maybe even some guys stepping up in his absence could help them as the season goes on.
As you said, huge one coming up this weekend. They go to the Fog to take on Kansas. It was a weird week for sure for Illinois. I mean, from the highest of highs to, I don't want to say the lowest of lows, but to a really disappointing outing at home against Penn State. But, I mean, you go to Madison Square Garden in the spotlight, you knock off number 2 Texas, just the second time in program history they've beaten a top 2 team away from home, and then came home and just did not go well against Penn State. And Brad Underwood really laid into them afterwards, saying that his team just completely lacked leadership. What does leadership look like? What is he saying was absent in that game that presumably they had in the game against Texas?
Yeah, what do you see? Yeah, what is leadership? I think from the outside, okay, we're not in there in the huddles day-to-day in practice, but one thing I look for is who's bringing guys together. Who after, an unfortunate play, after coach is on you, after a ref makes a bad call, who's, hey, let's huddle up, let's come together. And that's something I look for from the outside. Who has a voice? Who can you hear on the court? Who's, you see communicating with the purpose beyond just kind of rah-rah stuff. Those are things I'm looking for. The body language of guys. After a team goes on a run, what's the body language like? Are guys hanging their heads? And so I think those are the things that Brad Underwood is searching for with this team. Okay, who's going to step up and right the ship after a 6-0 run and it doesn't become a 10-0 run? Those are the key things. And look, over the course of a season, you mentioned big win against number 2 Texas. At MSG, you're coming home against an unranked Penn State team. The consistency. I think leaders bring consistency. It's easy to get up for one game, to have a great performance. The ball might go in. You're feeling good about yourself, but then can you come back the next game and bring it again? Or vice versa. After a bad performance, can you get back on the horse and kind of gather the troops? And so they're searching for that. I think one guy that could provide some of that is Luke Goody. Even as a freshman, I mentioned that, who's bringing guys together. He was someone I saw that in moments. He's been out with an injury.
Right.
I think he'll be back in January, but they're searching for that because this is a talented team. They're deep, they're athletic, they're not flawless, but they're a talented team. And I think if someone steps up with the voice, as Coach mentioned very pleasantly after that game, that'll really benefit them.
Goody's still in a boot as of now, so not really back doing much of anything with the team. But again, they were optimistic, as you said, that maybe they get him at some point next month when we were down there on Saturday. It is really interesting to see kind of how the team reacts to what was a pretty obvious kick in the pants and a little bit of a challenge from Brad Underwood. Clearly, he knows it's in there. Otherwise, you don't say that, right? You don't go down that road if you don't believe that you have guys who can be the leaders that you want them to be.
I think he likes his team. And Brad's a coach that he's pretty transparent. Win or lose, I mean, he praises his team, and he's like that in the media. He's like that just if I interact with him in the community. I think he knows what buttons to push. And I think he does have some tough-minded guys, but they pride themselves on this everyday mentality, and that's a difficult thing to do. So I think he was very calculated in those post-game comments. And here's the thing: they got Alabama A&M next. I'm calling that game. They have Missouri. That's a big one coming up before Christmas. But
playing pretty well, by the way, up until this past weekend.
Yeah.
States, yeah.
But we're not going to really see until they face some adversity. And I don't know if they'll face that Saturday. I don't know if they'll face that Missouri. So it'll come this season when that adversity hits, when they struggle, and that's where we'll see if his point has really come across.
You're right, though, to your point, right? Everyday guys, I mean, that's his mantra, that you have to bring it every day, and maybe this is just a point of it. It can't just be when the spotlight's on you. It has to be in every practice after those big games, and it certainly has to be in a game against a conference opponent that's pretty good, and Penn State is pretty good. It has not been a great week for Maryland, but definitely ahead of schedule under Kevin Willard. They have a huge one coming up this week against UCLA. Actually, the game is tomorrow against the Bruins. But what have you seen here early on from the new head coach?
Well, 8-0 start, playing great. Then they lost the last two. I like how they play. What really benefited him, he got a core back. Donta Scott, Hakeem Hart, Julian Reese has emerged. That helped him. I thought he did great with the transfers. Jameer Young has been really, really good. Don Carey has not found his shot yet. This guy came in as a very capable shooter. If he can knock down shots, that really helps him because they've struggled to score the ball in the last two games. But I love this team plays aggressive defense. Kevin Willard will have them change up defenses. They'll full court press, three-quarter court. They'll throw in some traps. They play zone. They play man. I thought that Illinois game, they got a big win. Down the stretch, sideline out of bounds, the first possession, they trapped the first pass, forced a timeout. Then after the timeout, they went zone. So just as he's willing to push different buttons with an experienced team, they have some veteran guys, they have some versatile athletic guys. So I like this team. Again, they're not a perfect team, but they're going to be a really formidable foe. And this is a great chance for them to get back on it after a couple losses against a great UCLA team.
Hard to have a perfect team when you inherit a team and you're trying to piece it together and mold it into what you want it to be. But he's done a phenomenal job, as you said. And the defensive effort has certainly been there. Even in those two losses, they gave up a total of 120 points, so 60 points per game. They're going to play defense. I don't think there's any question.
You go 2 for 24 from three, and you're in the game. You have a chance to tie it in. That
three first-half field goals, and you still have a chance to win the game.
A key for them, Jameer Young had 7 assists that game. The rest of the team had 2. So that's kind of a barometer to me.
Yeah.
If you have 2 assists, the other 9 guys that play whatever, it's tough to get quality looks. So I think just better ball movement, and you would expect offenses to come along as the season progresses.
We mentioned Wisconsin into the poll for the first time this season. It's hard to believe that people doubt them, but
I do. Why?
People doubt them every single year, but here they are back in a place that seems to be their birthright, competing for a Big Ten title and have a legitimate, really solid team. What has stood out about this kind of latest iteration of the Badgers?
Well, this is rinse and repeat. I mean, I don't know what stands out. They're incredibly disciplined. They're deliberate on offense. You know, every year defensively, what they do is they defend as a unit of 5. I mean, those 5 players on the court are so connected. Kevin Willard, after they lost to Wisconsin, he talked about them being on a string. You know, when that ball moves, all 5 guys move with it. They're connected, and they're so smart as a team. So defensively, they really load up on your best players and make it hard for them. And offensively, you know where the ball's going to go. It might be predictable, but they're very effective because they make sure Tyler Wall's going to get the shots. Chucky Hepburn's going to have the ball in his hands. And this is, you hinted at this yesterday with Rafael on the show. You talked about they always have maybe a guy that can kind of deviate from the script. You know, I would say they kind of go rogue from the Wisconsin way a bit. You need that because if 3 or 4 guys out there are very fundamental, you need some guy that can go create, make a play. They've had guys over the years, Tyler Wall, Chucky Hepburn, other 2 guys this season.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that because it takes a little gumption, I think, sometimes to be that guy. And as you say, they've got a couple. I mentioned Ben Brust, who was one that always struck me that he took shots that no one else on their team could take.
You got to have 1 or 2.
But Bo Ryan was okay with it, right?
Yes.
He kind of lived with it, and we saw a little bit of that with Trayvon Jackson as well. And I think we're seeing that with Chucky Hepburn. You're right, Tyler Wall a little bit too. Really sad news in college football today. Mississippi State announcing that head coach Mike Leach passed away last night due to complications from a heart condition. Leach was just 61 years old. He was, of course, one of the most innovative and colorful personalities in the sport, won 158 games during his career which also included head coaching stints at Texas Tech and Washington State. There's a Big Ten tie here as well. The Bulldogs scheduled to face Illinois in the ReliaQuest Bowl on January the 2nd. And Illini coach Brett Bielema released a statement in the aftermath of Leach's passing saying, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with Mike Leach's family. Today is a sad day for college football. We lost a great coach, a great person, and one of the legendary personalities in our sport. Mike and I built a long friendship after first meeting at the Alamo Bowl in the early 2000s. We shared so many memories over the years. R.I.P. Mike." Award season in full swing. What a week it has been for Michigan center Oluwatimi. The transfer from Virginia became the first Michigan player ever to win the Outland Trophy, given to the nation's best interior lineman. Also captured the Remington Award as the nation's top center. Oluwatimi and company, of course, on their way to the CFP to battle TCU in the Fiesta Bowl. And Oluwatimi is today's big interview. He joins me now here on the Big Ten Network. Olu, congratulations. You think about all of the great players who have played at Michigan through the years, and you are the first ever Outland Trophy winner. I was shocked to see that. What does it mean to you to be the first?
I mean, it means a lot because, you know, Michigan is such a historic program, and like you said, the dogs and the you know, legends that has came through and wore the maize and blue. So, you know, me being the first, you know, I kind of feel sometimes that like I might not be deserving, but, you know, I'm very grateful for the award.
Well, those of us who watched you play this year can certainly vouch for the fact that you were deserving. I mean, a fabulous season. You kind of were in a weird spot, I think. I mean, you dropped into this program. You transferred in the offseason from Virginia, for those who don't know. You joined an offensive line that had a ton of key pieces back and that had won the Joe Moore Award last year as the best offensive line in the country. What is it like? What's kind of the balancing act when you join a group that has been that successful, and yet they're also leaning heavily on you to fill a key spot?
I mean, it was a seamless transition. Just had to come in and put my head down and grind and be the person that they brought me here to be, and that was to, you know, elevate the front. So, you know, that was my goal, and you know, we got 2 games to go, and hopefully at the end of the season, Coach Moore could be like, he made the right decision and bringing me in to, and you know, I elevated the front.
So I knew that you had started your career, or you'd played, I should say, at Virginia, previous to coming to Michigan. We're a really good player there. I did not realize that you'd actually begun at Air Force, a 2-star recruit, began your career at Air Force before transferring to Virginia as a walk-on. When you think about all of that, 2-star recruit to winning the Remington, winning the Outland Trophy, you think about how far you've come, what goes through your mind?
I mean, I'm just blessed, and I'm grateful at the journey that I had to walk and what it taught me, and you know how hungry it kept me and how humble it kept me, and to where I am now. At the end of the day, you know, sometimes your path might be different. It might be a little longer, and you might not think it's fair, but you got to go through it. And you know, I went through it, and you know, the job's not done, and hopefully I could still get to play this game for many more years.
Your parents are immigrants from Nigeria. You have called your father the hardest working person you know. Give me some insight into him and how you have learned from him.
You know, both my parents, you know, they raised 6 kids, and me being the youngest, and growing up, we didn't really have a lot of money, but you know, they always made sure that they kept us in good neighborhoods, made sure that they instilled the right values and principles into us, and then you know, just my dad having to grind to make rent, and you know, my mom also worked too, but you know, my dad was, you know, he's just seeing his work ethic, and you know, how he never, you know, lost faith. And how he also is a man of faith, and you know how his religion and his faith pushed him to raise us the way he did. So you know, all that, you know, that's why he's my idol, and that's why I call him the hardest working person that I know.
That's great stuff. You picked up football in 6th grade. What hooked you about the sport?
I had a friend, my best friend at the time. His name was Andre. And he was a quarterback, and I was a big kid, and he was like, bro, come on, come play. So, you know, I never played organized sports before then. I just played stuff around the neighborhood, and I was like, all right, let's do it. And he probably wanted me to come and block for him and play O-line, but I ended up playing D-line that year, and I thought I was a tight end, but I didn't get no snaps at tight end, just D-line.
What prevented you from being a tight end? I feel like I might know where this is going, but I have to ask the natural follow-up.
I guess I had too much baby fat at that point.
So your older brother played at Maryland. You went to DeMatha, which of course is a legendary high school, literally right down the street from the University
Yep.
of Maryland. Did you give any thought to following him there?
No, not really. You know, when I decided to go to Virginia, I didn't really have any Power 5 opportunities other than walk-on opportunities, but he felt comfortable in telling me that going to Virginia was the right decision, and so you know, I'm happy with the decision I made, and I'm happy where I'm at.
How did you work your way up there? What's it like when you join a program as a walk-on? You're, again, a transfer from Air Force. You were not a highly touted guy. How do you work your way up from just a guy who all they promised was a roster spot and a place to hang his clothes to being one of the best players in the country?
I mean, you just had to grind. But I mean, I got to Virginia because one of my older teammates in high school, he was a year older, and he ended up walking on to Virginia and playing very well. He redshirted, and then his redshirt freshman year, he ended up winning ACC Defensive Rookie of the Year. And he just, I mean, he saw the caliber of guy I was in high school, and he was like, I really think you can help us out on the O-line. And, you know, me knowing him and him knowing me, I felt like, you know, he was telling me the truth. And, you know, he obviously knew my circumstance. He knew I wanted to come there and be a guy. So I trusted that, and it was much closer to home. So I ended up going to Virginia, and it worked out.
To what extent have you been in touch with your former teammates there? Obviously, incredible tragedy surrounding that program last month.
You know, some of my best friends are on the UVA roster, and it was a long week a couple weeks ago. But you know, I always talk to them. We joke around. We got group chats where we send in different funny videos, and that's on social media or whatnot. And you know, we always checking in on each other. But yeah, those are still my guys, even though I'm not playing ball with them anymore.
Well, you're not, because you're at Michigan. You've done an incredible job, as we talked about. What's been your biggest thrill as a Wolverine? What's been the best part for you of being a part of this program?
There's a lot of great things about coming to Michigan and being a football player here in Ann Arbor. The fan base is crazy and rampant. Like, you know, they in one of my first weeks here, you know, a kid and his dad, we were at a restaurant, and they recognized me, and I only been in Ann Arbor for a week. And so, you know, the fan love is awesome. The university is, you know, it's top notch, and there's just so many great teams at the university. So many teams competing for Big Ten championships, so many teams competing for national championships. So being around the caliber athletes that are here, that's thrill. And obviously the game day experience at the Big House. There's not a bigger stadium in all of college football. And you know, being able to run out the tunnel and hit the banner, you know, it's a great thrill. And obviously, you know, going to Ohio State and going to the Shoe and playing there, that's also a great venue. And you know, being able to beat Ohio State and winning the Big Ten. So I mean, this season has been very magical. And I mean, there's not really one thing that I could just pinpoint as a thrill. There's been a lot of thrills being on this team.
You mentioned the academic component of it. You're getting a master's in social work, which is quite admirable. I get a sense you're going to be able to play some football for a while, but ultimately, what would you want to do with that MSW?
I'm not sure yet. Undergrad, I got an economics degree from Virginia, and paired that with social work. So I got the I guess the number side and the economy side, and then I paired that with the people side, and you know, and the emotions and you know, being there and being, you know, kind of your brother's keeper in the social work field. So I don't know, but I'm well prepared. I have some backing from two big universities, or two very prestigious universities. So I'm excited for whenever I'm done playing ball. What's next?
I like your chances with that combination, I've got to say. Finally, before I let you go, give me a scouting report on TCU. You guys are obviously digging deep, I would imagine, into film right now. What can we expect from the Horned Frogs, from your point of view, obviously, on the defensive end?
Defensively, man, they're big and thick up front. They run a 3-down front, and they got a lot of extra fits from linebackers and safeties. So they're going to be very active in trying to stop our rushing attack. And they're very good tacklers, and you got to be that way in the Big 12 because there's all these spread offenses, and guys are on the offense side of the ball are getting the ball in space. So you got to make a lot of open field tackles, a lot of one-on-one tackles, and that shows up on film. Like just initially watching them, that they, when there's a tackle to be made, they're more often than not they're making the tackle. So, our guys they've done a great job of making people miss all year, and that's gonna be the same thing because there a lot of linebackers and a lot of safeties are going to present themselves, in the hole or at the second level, and if we can make them miss, and obviously we put a hat on a hat. As an O-line, then we could have a good day rushing the ball. But they're a talented front, talented defense. They got the Jim Thorpe Award winner. So it's going to be a great battle. It's another 2 versus 3 matchup. We had that week rivalry week, and we're excited to play on this stage and against a great opponent like TCU.
I know Big Ten fans are excited to watch you, Michigan fans in particular. Oluwatimi, congratulations on just a phenomenal year, on all the awards that you have garnered. You're going to need to clear some space there on the mantle for those, Olu.
Yep, they're going to have a home for sure. They're definitely going to have a home.
All right. Yeah, don't have them end up on the floor in your closet or anything like that. They deserve better than that. Oluwatimi, congratulations again, and we look forward to seeing you coming up here in Arizona. Best of luck in the CFP.
Thank you. Go Blue.
And one of the beauties of basketball is there are so many different ways to play. I know you wanted to talk about style, and I don't think there's any better place to start than Penn State. I had a front row seat for that game on Saturday. I don't think I've ever seen a team play exactly how they play. 4 out around a point guard who's going to back you into the post. It's a unique system.
I have at the YMCA. It's usually not pretty. Okay, it's usually not. Yeah, it's what Micah Shrewsbury has done. It's like, let me see what I got to work with. And he has designed a game plan perfect for the Penn State Nittany Lions. Jalen Pickett, here you go. Here's a rock. We'll give you a boatload of ball screens. We'll put you in those situations. He's so good at once he gets a player on his hip and just keeping him in jail, and then he's spraying that ball around to shooters. Or then what I think what you love, Dave, is they call it a Barkley dribble. So if you're a player and you're driving from the perimeter, the defense cuts you off, well, you just turn your backside to him and start backing him down. And he's the best player in the league, maybe, at 6'2", 6'3", with his back to the basket in the post. His footwork is impeccable. And then Andrew Funk, Cameron Winter, Seth Lundy's playing terrific. They surround him with shooters, just a different way of play. They're going to give opponents just fits. I know coaches, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Scouting for them, having them come in. You can't prepare for a guy like Jalen Pickett.
And it's hard to double him because if you double him, you're leaving one of their shooters open, and they're such a good shooting team.
One more thing on Pickett. I said Zach Edey is the National Player of the Year now. Okay, at this point, I don't think there's anybody in the country that can control a game like Jalen Pickett, though. Dominates the ball, gets everybody involved. He's terrific.
Next two, you want to touch on Iowa and Michigan State.
Similar from 4 out, 5 out like Penn State, but this is more equal opportunity. Both teams have a lot of guys that can create for themselves, create for their teammates, play fast, play with flow. I think a key for them, though, especially Iowa, I noticed this against Wisconsin, you want to play fast, but you don't have to shoot fast. Okay, when the ball has energy, when it's moving around, they're really good. Same with Michigan State, always good in transition, but they don't have to take quick shots. I do like Michigan State this year with playing those 2 point guards together. They're fun to watch. They just lack some depth.
We've talked about Purdue a little bit on this show. One unique piece, but what stands out stylistically? Inside-out perfection
play for them. About 40% of their shots are threes. They're also taking over 21 free throw attempts a game, so they do it from inside and out. I love what's called a zoom action, Dave. They get a pin down to then a handoff. You saw Fletcher Lawyer take that handoff in for a dunk. They're great at that action. Zoom action, look for that.
Second in the nation in offensive efficiency. Let's go with one more, Ohio State.
Ohio State, Chris Holtmann is a mastermind of getting his guys in the right positions for one-on-one success. Zed Key in the post, Justice Suing from the high post, Bryce Sensabaugh. I think we're going to see his game expand from all over the court. He's done it in the past. He's doing it again with this team.
Really interesting stuff. I'm always fascinated.
We got to
by
talk
the
more.
different approaches. Yeah, absolutely. I'm also fascinated when teams switch their approach. I think Illinois has been one of the great examples of that this year. Trent, this was fun. We'll do it again as the year goes on. Take care.